Hello everyone and welcome back. It's Hari here with week 4 of the YSP 5th grade spring curriculum. And this week we'll be dealing with plant and animal cells. This is another shift in science topic from last week, which was the physics and engineering of the egg drop, but now we're moving into the life sciences, which we'll stick with for the next few weeks of YSP. Looking at the materials list, you can tell your students are going to enjoy this lesson when you see the gummy worms and fruit roll-ups and all these other sweets and candies that they're going to get a chance to work with and potentially eat at the end of the lesson. The one that I want to pay attention to is the fruit roll-ups. Sometimes these can get stuck to each other, and when you try to unroll them, then they will rip and tear, and that's not really conducive to a cytoplasm as it's supposed to represent in this lesson. I recommend refrigerating them beforehand because when they're warm, they get all sticky and don't tear apart easily, but when they're cold, you can unwrap them and peel off the entire rectangle and still be able to keep it in one piece. So that's one quick tip for that. As for the rest of these materials, just make sure you take inventory before you go into this lesson, just like any other, but this one's especially important because there's so many different pieces and components like the M&Ms, the marshmallows, the red vines / Twizzlers, that if you're missing one of them, that could throw off your students' understanding of the plant and animal cells. Let's go ahead and look at the vocabulary for this lesson, and yes, there is a lot of it. Obviously, with plant and animal cells, a topic that they might not have learned before, there are lots of different components or organelles in these cells that they're going to have to become familiar with as we go through the lesson. In the short period of time that you're going to have in the classroom, it can be kind of difficult and intimidating to be able to explain what all these different parts do. The best way, or what I recommend to explaining what the different vocab or what these different organelles do, is comparing it to something that they already are pretty familiar with. Like comparing the nucleus to be the brain of the cell. That could be one thing that you keep in mind, and that might allow it to stick in the student's head a little bit more. Another one is the chloroplasts kind of act like solar panels for the plant cell, taking in the sunlight and turning it into energy, kind of like solar panels do. They should be familiar with that because we're in LA and it's sunny a lot. But those are just a couple examples. That vocab is going to be pretty difficult for this lesson because there's so much of it, but if you can make those connections, that'll help the students a lot. Moving on, a lot of the engagement, these questions are pretty basic. You can ask the class this and try to prompt some of the responses with some pictures. This picture on the left does look a little bit too complex for them with a bunch of these extra organelles that they aren't going to be learning about, but if you can find a couple pictures or something that the students can look at to kind of compare the two cells so they can help answer this question a little bit easier, what are the difference between plant and animal cells, that would be ideal, maybe in a PowerPoint format, however you think works best for your class. Now looking at exploration, you can tell that the students are going to be making their own models of plant and animal cells in groups, and they'll each be given a paper plate, and that'll be the outline of the cell, whether it be the plant cell or the animal cell. But the thing that's going to be a little bit difficult is the paper plate might have to be cut into different shapes for both of them. I'd say it's okay that it stays in the circle for the animal cell, but for a plant cell, you know those are more rigid. That might require that you have them cut the plate into a rectangle. It's up to you to try to figure out the best way to deliver that message to your students. As for the rest of these organelles / candy right here, you have two ways to figure this out. I highly recommend one over the other. The one I recommend is that you organize the supplies into Ziploc bags, like put a Ziploc bag with a couple red vines, 1 junior mint, 3 jelly beans, 2 marshmallows, and so on and so forth. So you can just hand one supply bag to every one of your groups, and that means you don't need to go around counting and handing out individual supplies as you go through the lesson. But if that's what you think will work best for your classroom, go ahead and do that. I just recommend doing the Ziploc bag to save you time and save you unnecessary trouble. By doing this exploration, by making those couple cells in front of them, they should be able to understand that the big differences between plant and animal cells are the chloroplasts and the cell walls. The chloroplasts are going to be important later as we do the further lessons in this semester, but those are the key differences that allow them to answer the question. And I think that's it, wrapping up this lesson. Good luck, and I'll see you next week with a photosynthesis lesson.